You clicked on this video because moving on feels impossible, and you're right. It is. You feel stuck in a loop of broken promises and disappointment. You look at your life and think, this isn't the life I was supposed to have. Right now, you're probably scrolling through social media, seeing people live. The life you planned for yourself, your chest tightens, your throat closes. You close the app, but the ache remains. That's not jealousy you're feeling, that's grief. And here's the brutal truth that nobody tells you. Moving on feels impossible because you're not just stuck. You're grieving someone who never existed, the person you promised yourself you'd become, the life you swore you'd build, the dreams you carried like sacred promises. Here's what nobody tells you about this kind of pain. You're not just sad about where you are, you're mourning. This isn't ordinary sadness. This is mourning a death that nobody else can see, the death of who you thought you'd be by now. I was 25 when I first felt it. That crushing weight in my chest when I realized the confident, successful person I'd promised my teenage self I'd become just wasn't happening. I'd wake up each morning and for a split second, I'd forget. Then reality would crash back. This isn't the life I was supposed to have. You know that feeling, don't you? When you catch your reflection and think, this isn't who I was going to be. When you hear your own voice in conversations and it sounds nothing like the person you'd imagined becoming. When you realize you're living someone else's life, except that someone else is the discarded version of yourself. There's a name for what you're experiencing. Psychologists call it disenfranchised grief, mourning something society doesn't recognize as a real loss. But I call it self-grief, the devastating process of mourning the future version of yourself that will never exist. Self-grief feels different because you're not just losing a person, you're losing an entire timeline. Every conversation that future self would have had, every achievement they would have unlocked, every moment of confidence they would have felt. It's the death of infinite possibilities compressed into one crushing realization. That version of me is never coming back. The pain hits in waves. You see someone living your dream job and your stomach drops. You pass the neighborhood where you imagine living and your eyes burn. You hear a song that belonged to the person you thought you'd become, and you have to pull over because you can't breathe. These aren't just reminders, they're gravestones marking dreams that died. What makes this grief particularly brutal is how invisible it remains. Your friends see you as the same person. Your family doesn't understand why you seem lost. Colleagues wonder why you lack motivation. They can't see that you're attending a funeral every day, the funeral of who you thought you'd be. You made promises to yourself. Maybe at 25, you swore you'd be married with kids by 30. Maybe at 22, you guaranteed you'd have that business launched by now. Maybe you looked in the mirror 5 years ago and made a pact with your future self about the life you'd build together. Those weren't just hopes, they were contracts you signed in blood with yourself. When those promises break, you don't just feel disappointed. You feel like you've committed the ultimate betrayal. You've failed the one person who believed in you most, the younger version of yourself who trusted you completely to make it happen. The shame compounds everything. People tell you to be grateful for what you have. They remind you that your imagined future wasn't real anyway. But that future felt more real than your current reality. It guided every decision. It got you through breakups, job losses, family drama. It was the North Star that made sense of your struggles. This grief wouldn't be so paralyzing if it existed alone. But it creates 4 specific mental traps that convince you moving forward is impossible. I've been caught in every single one. The first trap is comparison. You measure your current self against the imagined future self, and you always lose. That future version had everything figured out. They were confident, successful, and deeply loved. They had the perfect relationship, the ideal career, the life you dreamed about. Your current reality feels like a participation trophy compared to that shining vision. This comparison is rigged from the start. You're comparing your behind-the-scenes mess with someone else's highlight reel, except that someone else is the fictional version of you. That future self never had to deal with anxiety attacks, financial stress, or the messiness of actual human relationships. They existed in a perfect world where everything went according to plan. I spent years doing this. Every morning I'd wake up and immediately start the comparison. Future me would have been at the gym by now. Future me would have had their life together. Future me wouldn't be crying in their car in a Target parking lot. The gap between who I was and who I'd promised to become felt insurmountable. The second trap is sunk cost. You've invested so much time, energy, and identity into becoming that specific person that starting over feels like admitting total failure. You think about all the years you spent working toward that vision, all the other paths you didn't explore because you were committed to this one. This trap whispers poison in your ear. You can't change direction now. Look at all the time you've already invested. all those sacrifices you made, all those other opportunities you passed up. Starting over means admitting it was all for nothing. The third trap is perfectionism. Since you can't become that exact future person, your mind concludes that any other version of success doesn't count. It's all or nothing. Either you achieve that specific dream or you're settling for mediocrity. Either you become who you promised or you've given up entirely. This trap makes every alternative path look like defeat. It convinces you that adapting your dreams means lowering your standards, that finding a different version of happiness is accepting failure, so you remain frozen, unable to move toward anything that isn't the exact replica of your original vision. The fourth trap is timeline anxiety. You're convinced you've missed your window, that there was a specific age when things were supposed to happen, and now it's too late. You see others achieving similar goals and think, I should have done that years ago. I'm too old now. I've missed my chance. This trap makes you feel like you're racing against a clock that's already run out. Like opportunities have expiration dates that you somehow missed while you were busy trying to become someone else. But here's what I learned after years of being trapped in this cycle. These mental prisons have keys. The way out isn't fighting the grief, it's getting specific about what you're actually mourning. Right now, I want you to do something that might hurt. I want you to name exactly what died, not the vague idea of disappointment, but the precise dreams that are never coming back, the specific career you thought you'd have, the relationship timeline you'd mapped out in detail, the version of confidence you thought would come naturally by this age, the financial security you'd assumed would follow, the person you'd imagined becoming when you looked in the mirror at 22. These weren't just wishes floating in your head. They were identities you'd tried on and lived in mentally for years. You'd rehearsed conversations as that person. You'd imagined how they'd handle problems. You'd felt their confidence in your body during difficult moments. They were real because you made them real through years of belief and commitment. Acknowledging this loss doesn't make you dramatic or weak. It makes you human. You're not mourning something trivial. You're grieving the death of a complete life vision that felt as real as anything you've ever touched. But here's what most people miss about grief. It has stages, and acceptance isn't the same as giving up. I spent 3 years thinking acceptance meant settling, that honoring my grief meant staying stuck in it forever, that moving forward would somehow dishonor the dreams that died. That's not what acceptance means. Accepting that your original future self won't exist doesn't mean accepting that no meaningful future is possible. It means graduating from mourning what won't happen to designing what still can. The difference between acceptance and resignation is intention. Resignation says nothing good will happen now. Acceptance says something different can happen now. Resignation closes doors you can't see. Acceptance opens new ones you couldn't notice while you were staring at the door that wouldn't budge. This is where most people get stuck. They think moving forward means betraying their former dreams, like they're abandoning the younger version of themselves who believed so deeply in that original vision. The guilt feels unbearable. How can I want something different? Doesn't that mean all that time was wasted? But honoring your former dreams doesn't require staying imprisoned by them. You can acknowledge how much that vision meant to you while also acknowledging that you've learned things about yourself and life that make a different path more authentic now. The protocol isn't about forgetting who you thought you'd be. It's about taking the core values and desires that made that future appealing and finding new ways to express them. Maybe you dreamed of being a successful entrepreneur, but now you realize what you actually wanted was creative control over your work. Maybe you imagined the perfect marriage by 25, but what you really craved was deep emotional intimacy and partnership. When you strip away the specific details of your original vision, the exact job title, the precise timeline, the particular relationship structure, you often find that the underlying needs can be met in ways you hadn't considered. The future self you're grieving was just one possible expression of your deepest values. There are other expressions waiting to be discovered. Moving on isn't about forgetting who you thought you'd be. It's about honoring that vision enough to find new ways to express what made it meaningful. The future self you're grieving taught you what you value, what you're capable of caring about, and how deeply you can commit to something that matters. That capacity for caring, that depth of commitment, that ability to envision something better, none of that died with your original timeline. Those qualities are still alive in you, waiting to be directed toward possibilities you haven't discovered yet. Your grief has been real because your dreams were real. Now it's time to let that same energy that created those dreams create new ones. Dreams that fit who you've become through this process of loss and growth. If you're ready to rebuild from here, watch my video Do This Before You Give Up on Yourself. It shows you the Practical steps for designing a future that honors both your grief and your growth. Subscribe so you don't miss it, because your story isn't over. It's just beginning a new chapter that you get to write.